My first question was that this is kind of unknown territory for Obsidian, the world of, not World of Tanks.
But doing like a massive multiplayer game.
But the game with tanks was the first.
Right.
And actually at the barbecue party I was talking to some financial manager, and I think he told me that you have actually people from other tank games working for you on Armored Warfare.
Well, we have a lot of. So luckily we're in Orange County, right? We're here in Kathleen Irvine, and so there's a lot of companies around here that have done things like this. Blizzard being one of them. We're like a mile from Blizzard, so yes, we're really close to Blizzard. So and it's interesting because that's kind of. Orange County has just been interesting in that originally what happened was in the early 90s it was Interplay and Virgin and a couple small studios, and they kind of all exploded and they became lots of different studios. So luckily for us, what it meant is that we know a lot of people in the area, and we've been able to for people that we didn't, for positions or just programmers, particularly server programmers that we didn't have, we knew people, we could hire people, and so we were able to bring that on. But also what we were able to do is that sort of internally already we had a bunch of people who just loved these style games, loved MOBAs, loved multiplayer PvP games, and so with Rich being obviously one of the main ones, and
way too much time.
Way too much. I mean, as Rich was saying, Rich has 10,000 games or 10,000 games of World of Tanks, right? So
wow.
Yeah,
League of Legends matches,
7,000 League of Legends. So,
way too many hours on that side.
Yes. So that's, I guess that's kind of why we're able to make the transition, is we were able to find good people that were close already, and also we had people. I don't think we would have made the game if we didn't have people internally who understood understood that kind of game as well. I mean, I would be the first person to admit that when we started, my brain for many years was all offline, single player, story, character-based RPGs, right? And so, but that was for a certain period of my career. The big part of my career was just, the first 3 or 4 years of my career, I would just, you name a kind of game and I probably made it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and the big difference, and as I was talking to the finance guy, he told me that your main, focus is to implement the story in the game, and that you did that at the last trailer, for example, for the Lost Island map. And so, are you planning to push the story somewhere into like something that hasn't happened yet, or are you going to follow the historical line more, like?
Right.
Yeah. So the actual setting for Armored Warfare is near future. So like within the next decade and a half. But it is a fictional story. There's a few reasons for that. One of the big reasons is by making a fictional story, it gives us flexibility to kind of tell the story that we want to tell, kind of have the bad guys and the good guys that we want to have. When you try and have a global game that's going to appeal to a global audience, using existing nations, you kind of like, well, are the Russians bad guys? They are in a lot of Western games.
So we can kind of cut to the chase. We don't want to talk about we don't want to talk about the Ukraine. Right? Ultimately,
right,
it's exactly right.
So it's like, no, it is a fictional story, and actually, backing up a little bit, it's actually sort of you kind of call alternative history or revisionist history. It actually backs up even before our modern day and sort of changes the events to set the stage for our setting. So we've done a lot of writing on that internally, but we haven't shared a lot of it with players yet. And that's something that we really want to start ramping up on, is introducing details about that story. We don't want to just like post a big, like, hey, here's a 20-page story about what the setting is for Armored Warfare. It's a game, and we think that as a game, it's more fun for players to sort of explore and learn that story through playing. And so we're really going to look at things, details in maps, messages you receive from characters. Some of those messages actually might be what do you call it, the unreliable narrator. So like, you may have one character tell you that things happen one way, and then another character is going to tell you, no, it happened this way. And it's kind of up to the player to like think about the clues that they've seen in the game and think about what's the actual true, like what happened there. Maybe they'll see a detail on a map that might clue them into the actual truth of something. So
and kind of from our role-playing roots as well is the idea that for every map and everything we do in the game, we write a ton of stuff, and so it's and a lot of it the player will never see. Like players probably will see 10% of the stuff we actually think about and talk about. But what it does is it makes sure that every map we have and why it's set up the way that it is consistent. So like while players won't like consciously see like, you know, understand, well, there's a tree here and a wheelbarrow there and that's, but there's a usually there's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind it, and that just makes the game, it just consciously, I mean subconsciously it makes it feel better because it's consistent.
And are you planning into remaking some PvE maps into PvP? Because players asked us about this.
Oh, okay.
They
So
wanted
like
to know.
taking some of the maps that you can play missions on and make them into a PvP map?
Yeah.
We actually did that once. One of our PvP maps we have in the game is called the Narrows. And that actually started out as a PvE mission that we used for Gamescom last year. And we were looking at the map and we were like, you know, this is kind of an interesting map. It would be fun to do battles on this map. And so the artist said, why don't you let us toy with it a bit and see if we can, you know, we had to kind of expand it a little bit and open it up a little bit, but ultimately it's the same map that we used as a PvE mission last year. So the opportunity is always there.
Maybe for next maps also.
Yeah, it's always possible.
But also I think the other thing that we also recognize for like particularly the PvP maps, they need to be massive, right? And so that's different than PvE to an extent. Like we just think about how like the dimensions and shape of PvE a bit differently. But I think it's, you know, it's sort of, as Rich was saying, a lot of it is just that, particularly if there's things people like about like just the feeling of a map like that, we will definitely look at it for PvP.
Okay. And another question that our fans wanted to ask was if you are planning to implement something similar to Levolution from Battlefield. So for example, on your Lost Island map, there would be like a ship that could fire from the distance to a certain spot on the map and
Calling down sort of our artillery from off the map.
something like this.
So that's something we've actually talked about a lot in our internal designs. It's the idea of calling down support fire. That gets tricky in a PvP context because it's one thing to get shot by that guy that I can see and then I can fight him. Getting killed by the ship offshore,
But you can't do anything.
You
so-
can't do
sometimes it
anything
can be
about it.
frustrating, right? So we've talked about it and we've never ruled it out as a possibility, but it has always been, you have to be careful with that. I mean, I think back to, actually it was Battlefield 2, they introduced the commander being able to call down the artillery strikes, and you could be having this awesome fight down in the streets, and then all of a sudden everyone gets nuked, and you're like, oh, well, we were having fun there.
But we have talked about like how a map can be slightly different.
Yeah, you know, backing up a little bit, one aspect where that could really factor in is the idea that the map could change, even during the match. So, you know, imagine you had like bridges connecting across a river ravine. If that ship fired in and blew up the bridge, and now has changed the routes that are available to you, that's interesting. And like, that's not frustrating, right? That's just kind of, oh, I was going to kind of circumvent, you know, flank around there. Now I have to rethink what I'm doing because the map just changed. I think there's a lot of room for things.
Right, and if there's 3 bridges and the ship blows up a different bridge, depending upon which map you're, you know, which time you're playing it, that can also change it as well. So.
Okay, and so if you can destroy bridges and everything, are you also planning on implementing the dynamic weather into the game? That would kind of, I don't know, affect it somehow, like freezing.
Just how it also, yeah, so even just how it looks as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually something we want to push more. Our actual original demo had that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking, you know, we really need to get more of that. That one you kind of started with a little bit of an overcast, and then it would start to rain, and then by the time you got to the end of the PvE mission, it's lightning and thick rain and everything going on, and it just kind of felt really cool to have those transitions take place. You don't really see that on our maps now. Part of the challenge is it takes a lot of work just to get the map looking just right with one lighting setting, and then I go to the artist, I'm like, that looks good, now can you set up 10 lighting settings for this map? But we would like to do it. CryEngine does support technology for it, and the engine is actually really good at those type of dynamic lighting changes. It does take a lot of manpower to make it look good across all the transitions, but we'd love to do that.
And another one is if you're going to add some camouflage nets that would be visible on the tanks.
Yes. Yeah, that's something. Actually, we need to put it back on the radar. We actually made them for the tanks last year. We had visible camo nets on the vehicles, and many of our older vehicles actually still have them in the artwork. They're not, you don't see them in the game. It just started turning into a scheduling thing because it was time consuming to make them for across all the vehicles, and so it kind of got into a, well, do only the vehicles that we've made them for get camo nets and camo bonuses? That's kind of unfair to the rest of the vehicles. So ultimately we decided to pull them out until we're ready to introduce it across the board. Absolutely would love to get visual camo nets back on the vehicles.
and some Czech-specific question.
Absolutely.
Are you going to add some Czechoslovakian tanks to the
Absolutely.
game?
Yes. That's been something I've actually been pushing for all this year. I wish I could just wave my hand and like now the tanks are in the game. These tanks have a really long
They're not
process for
complicated.
development.
No, they're so complicated.
Those Tier 9 vehicles that you got to check out in today's demo we've been working on those way back into early summer. So yes, absolutely there's going to be some Czechoslovakian tanks. We've already picked them out and we're looking forward to making them. It is going to be a little while before we can get them in. I wish it could be faster. For me, it's just I know that there's a lot of players there that would love to see them. And we've been talking about that for well over a year now of like, we need to get those vehicles in the game. There's a lot of people looking for them.
Yeah. So Czech audience would be absolutely thrilled about this.
Absolutely, and we know that. And it's, like I said, it's just because of the long schedule for these vehicles, that's the only reason they're not there yet, but they will definitely be there.
That's great. And another Czech question, are you going to localize the core game into Czech, like, I don't know, skills units and something like that? Because a lot of Czech people, they speak English on like low level and
Right.
they want everything translated. Something feels
Well,
bad
everyone prefers to see
translated.
in their own
Yeah.
language. No,
Except if you're playing Street Fighter.
that's better if it's not translated.
Yeah,
No.
some things are better.
Absolutely. I don't know what our localization plans are. We did start out with a core set of languages, but I would hope we continue to add more and more localization as the game goes on. There's no reason why we shouldn't. My preference is everyone gets to play the game in whatever language is most comfortable to them, right?
Yeah, the goal really is to keep on releasing more and more languages as time goes on.
That is great. And one personal question, what's your personal favorite game of the Obsidian? Like of all time?
Of all of them,
Yeah.
That Obsidian made.
yeah.
This is my favorite game. of the
Yeah, that's fair enough. And you would say, well, he's biased, but he's,
Fergus knows that's probably true.
I have no
love
clue.
it.
I would absolutely know that because this is his thing. It's for Rich.
Yeah.
This is the type of game that he's always
I mean-
always wanted to make.
Yes.
So-
And it's not just PvP. A big thing about it is that it's an online game that players can play and give feedback about, and we can make changes based on it. One of the hardest things for me as a developer on other titles we've shipped is we work really hard on the project, we crunch, we get it all done, and then it goes in a box, and it goes out there, and players go, oh, that's cool, but you also could have done this. And I'm like, yeah, that would have been really cool too. That really would have been cool too.
Yeah.
I'm sad we didn't get to do that actually. But
Or the worst is when we knew it as well.
Yeah,
And there was
especially
just no
yeah, we
time,
wanted
there was
to do that.
no resources or whatever. We're like, yes, you're right. Yeah.
But this game where players can go, we want to see more of that, and we can go, yeah, we want to see more of that too, and we're working on it. Completely different experience, and it's I love it.
Yeah, and My.com and Mail are great supporters of that. I mean, they really want us to keep on making it better and better. But my favorite thing, and I'm horrible at answering these questions with one, and I don't refuse to. So I can tell you what I'm proud of, right? And I'm proud of different games for different reasons. I'm proud of South Park because people tell us it's probably one of the best licensed games they've ever played. I'm proud of KOTOR 2 and Fallout New Vegas because if you go up on the internet, you can find any forum that there is, and there's arguments about whether KOTOR 2 is better than KOTOR 1 or New Vegas is better than Fallout 3. And with Eternity, I'm just proud of us for we created a whole new world and a whole new system, and it's great. Of course, there's things that as we're looking at doing Eternity 2, like things that we want to do differently and things like that. But no, I'm proud of us for all those things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great.